Good evening. We will open the Thursday, May 8th meeting of the Economic Development Commission. And beginning with our agenda, looking at the minutes from April 10th. Entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? Okay. Next on our agenda is the Housing Forum, which was held on the 30th. It was Housing Committee in coordination with the EDC. I was away, I wasn't able to attend, but Steve did, and perhaps you can enlighten us on the information for the night.
I'd be pleased to. Forgive my reading. I prepared a couple of comments because I think it's really worthwhile. So, as mentioned, on April 30th, Scott, Chatty, and I attended an information session hosted by the Woodbridge Housing Committee. The event was organized by Kathy Hunter, along with Housing Committee members, and featured a panel of experts who discussed housing as a key to community development and local economic growth. The panel included Michael Santoro from the Connecticut Department of Housing, who provided an overview of Connecticut's housing needs and available state incentives. Phoebe Plouffe from LISC, which is Local Initiative Support Corporation, who provided an introduction to its Community Housing Connections program and support that is available for local housing initiatives. David Morgan from Team Inc., who discussed the role of housing stability in healthy communities, and our own Dale Krupp, who talked about the role of workforce housing for attracting and retaining local businesses. Justin LaFountain from Goldman in York guided the conversation and provided a slide deck regarding demographics, population trends, and the link between housing and schools, employment, and economic development. I felt that and I believe everybody felt that the event was very well done and provided worthwhile information to our community as we examine our housing needs. Also, the event was recorded and should be available in viewing on WGA TV. I scanned WGA TV earlier and I didn't see it, but I may have missed it. As it relates to our EDC mission, the presentation brought out the reliance that our town has upon the residential taxpayer and underscores the importance of our commission's focus on business retention activities and future actions to make Woodbridge an attractive location for businesses. Certainly welcome any thoughts that Chadi, Scott, or others have regarding the event.
Agree. It was a good event. I think it's a good first step, though, and we should definitely, stay in lockstep with the housing committee, with TPZ, and any other applicable committees, because everything kind of works together. Housing, business, making Woodbridge I don't want to call it a destination, but for lack of a better word, a destination town where there's something to come here for, not just to live here, but to come and spend money here. I think all that's related, and if we don't support our housing initiatives, if you want to call them that, I think it's going to be harder to do the business retention, business expansion, and improve our situation regarding the percentages of residential tax base versus commercial tax base. So definitely should stay in the loop. I'd like to see more, though. I know Kathy Hunter well, so, like to see more. And
see enough of her.
And maybe get a little bit more into the impact. I think they touched on it. I don't remember all the details. They touched on it a little bit, but the impact of housing and the type of population, the demographics that we have on supporting a town like we want to, or we develop a bit more economically. So.
Yeah.
One thing I learned from it was, and I didn't really appreciate this, that when we talk about diversifying our tax base into commercial property, residential use, if it's an apartment building, is a commercial diversification. So that's a commercial property because it's not, owner-occupied condominiums or co-ops or single-family homes. That's so I didn't really appreciate that until that time, that's part of it. And as an anecdote, I went up to the bar networking event up in Torrington. It was at a brewery. I didn't have a beer. It was too early in the afternoon, but now I'm wishing I had. And, you know, they had a success story in Torrington where he started off with a 1,600 square foot restaurant in Torrington. Then he bought the $65,000 square foot building, turned his restaurant into 6,500. He bought pizzas for everybody in the whole room, like 100 people. He bought pizzas for everybody. And now he wants to put 30 units in that 65,000. You know, so in other words, you know, and the mayor's like all over him saying, he's a restaurateur, but now he's becoming diversifying her tax base, commercial property, you know, and that's the kind of thing that he's building his customers and all that together. So it was an interesting anecdote that hopefully we can get there too.
Good. One of the things you mentioned, and when I initially spoke with Kathy, was that the goal, if you will, going forward, is that there's going to be a lot more collaboration between the different boards and commissions in the town. So, to your point, housing with EDC, TPZ, conservation, everybody, so we can all kind of get, maybe not 100% on the same page, but we're working together to kind of feed the common good, right? So, makes a whole lot of sense to me.
I want to add one more thing that Dale brought up, which he, during that meeting, that he also brought up in one of our meetings. He kind of summarized our income, you know, the town's income, and I forgot the exact numbers, $1.5 billion or whatever it was. And he emphasized, or he stated for the audience to hear, that if you want to lower your mill rate 1 point, which he said, gave us that information a while back, you got to raise or lower your taxes by 1.5, you know, somewhere he said, I think 1.2 to 1.5, 1.2 to 1.3, whatever it was, $1 million. So that's a lot in tax revenue. Or, you know, you start budgeting, you know, accordingly, you know, reducing your budget. So we keep it in mind, if we want to lower our taxes, we got to raise $1.5 million in new taxes. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Are we getting a new sound system for the center, Jim?
I sure hope so. I sure hope so.
Well, bring these over here. These are pretty good.
Maybe just a megaphone.
Yeah.
You think after all the work that was done there, that could have been taken into some consideration, at least the acoustic portion, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, thank you, Steve. Moving on for the POCD update, we're kind of just in a limbo period right now, waiting for the actual reports to come back, and that will go to the Board of Selectmen and then ultimately to Planning and Zoning. There's following a window where comment can be made. So whether or not, that's also public comment, and then they'll come back again with kind of the final version to be voted on by the town. Any other questions on that?
We must have gotten an extension.
I didn't see a note to that effect, but that's
okay.
the timeline that's given, and that's what's on the website for the town. Next, Connecticut Main Street update. Our initial assessment meeting with them is on Wednesday the 14th. It's, according to Dale, it's probably 2.5 hours or so. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. And they're going to go through their 85 points, asking us. I asked Dale specifically had he had been through it. He said yes, he has, and that we should basically have the knowledge that's there between from an economic development standpoint, which is also going to tie into our number 7 on our agenda about retention with business listings and so forth, but also some questions about zoning. And my understanding is that Chris Sullivan will also attend to answer some of those questions that we may not have the answer to. More to come on that one. For the chair update from the TAC, there's really nothing new to report. There is a CCW presentation again to the Board of Selectmen for their more information for them, so they can come up with some decisions. And the TAC basically is done at this point. There's no more meetings scheduled for the TAC. 2030 Task Force and the Connectivity Open House. They're still working to nail down the date. between 2030 and SLR. We are trying to get that done in June. Tony, correct? That's the plan?
Yes, that's the plan.
And we're working specifically to connect with some of the businesses that are down in the business district who are going to be ultimately impacted by any of this, as well as townsfolk.
And Cliff, I just think they're waiting DOT report before they finalize things.
Right.
Like, they're aiming for June.
Okay. And that DOT is in conjunction with the drainage studies, right? Okay.
Cliff, is that strictly just infrastructure, open house, like, there's gonna be, 8 to 5, it's gonna be busy and dusty or something, or is it gonna be more of a sort of, what the infrastructure is for, kind of a thing, in terms of what's gonna happen to that area to spur economic development?
I think it's going to be a little of both.
Yeah.
So the idea is to make the information much more widely known about the project and what it's going to entail. When they're looking at the drainage, it's all about looking at, and we've spoken about this in numerous different things about, for instance, the diameter of a sewer pipe, right? Because all of that has to be taken into consideration when talking about any type of development and or when you're dealing with this infrastructure stuff. Beyond that, the whole plan, the 2030 plan, in conjunction with SLR, is there. It's on the website, but we found, talking to, and I don't know if anyone else has had the opportunity to, speaking with businesses, one in particular was ServPro, who had absolutely no idea about anything that was going on. So while the 2030 task force had, I'm sure, been in contact with some of these businesses, had the open houses at New England, there just either there wasn't an interest or maybe it just didn't get to the right person. So they were pleased with it to say, oh yes, there's going to be sidewalks on our side of the street. It's going to curtail people walking across our grass. At the same time, he's like, well, what's it going to do as far as slowing the traffic down? Is it going to make it more difficult coming and going from their business? So all this is supposed to be taken into consideration, and Mr. DiStefano from SLR is supposed to be from my understanding, with 2030 taking the lead on this presentation. So the agenda has not yet been developed for specifics, but this is what should be being put out there, because this is what's going to affect these folks, in the next year and a half or so when some of the digging begins.
Yeah, I thought some of the positive things about the EDC supported housing, when the planners were there and housing was there and everybody collaborating. I like the idea, the positiveness. I'd love to see that get built into this kind of, ServPro doesn't know about it, but wouldn't it be nice to, it's Woodbridge taking control, and this is what it's for. So, we are doing this. It's not somebody saying, here's what we're going to do. It's we are taking control, and we all need to take control. ServPro, you need to know about this. How do we take control of the situation and make sure we make it we take control, because otherwise it's going to be him and us. And so I'd love to see that sort of collaborative thing get into this right off the get-go. That would be just my suggestion, my wish list, to see that kind of positive. It was a good vibe when everybody got, we're going to take control of this. We're going to do something good.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that when we're looking at our retention plan, and we'll get to this in a couple minutes, when we're talking to these folks, we're going to be out interacting with them, getting everybody kind of in the know, who wants to be. Of course, some people aren't going to be engaged, but that's to be expected. At the same time, we're going to be kind of boosting the role of Economic Development Commission with these folks and saying, this is what we're looking at. We're collaborating with 2030, because the goal, if you will, once 2030 gets to a certain point, beyond this first connectivity portion of the project and further development, the direction is that the EDC will kind of step in, working again in conjunction with 2030, but take more of a lead in developing the plan for the business district, more so than what we are now.
Yeah.
So, is that open house targeted for June? Is that the date you referred to, Tony?
So, I think they are, I think the first selectman, Nika, would like to see it in June, because come July, August, people are away. So he's hoping that it could happen in June. Again, SLR is taking the lead on this in terms of, are we at the 30%? And I know they're waiting for some information on the DOT. So that's, I've limited information on that. I just know that they are waiting, but the hope is to have it the first meeting in June, and then there'll be one at 60% completion of the project, one at 90% completion of the project, as I understand it from, just the minutes from the 2030.
And
Committee.
SLR is the one that's coordinating the open house? Or is the 2030 committee task force?
I think jointly,
Jointly.
yeah.
Do you know if one has the ball? Because June's 3 weeks away, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, we're gonna need ample
It's a
warning for our
bouncing ball.
businesses.
It's a bouncing ball, and I think it's bouncing back and forth, and at some point, somebody's gonna have to grab it.
Yeah.
But-
I wanna make sure somebody's running with it, right?
Mhm.
Because this first step is kind of critical, not because we're gonna may or may not get a lot out of it, but it's the first step of communicating
Mm-hmm.
our community and getting the businesses together. So to me, that first step is critical, and we want that sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah, my observation was, and I don't know if I have it right, because, if you watch one 10 years ago when they did appeal, I think it was 10 years ago or maybe 15 years ago, but when you watch an old video, you weren't there, so you don't really know the context of it. But, there was discussions about the business district and how to create what somewhat seems similar to this, but it seemed a bit like it never got as done as maybe it should have. And in some of the stuff I watched, that may be critical to making sure that you put that on board sooner. That sort of whole team effort, like it's everybody participating, and Woodbridge takes control. Woodbridge, because it seemed, what I observed, and it may again be out of context, it just seems like something was sort of being delivered as opposed to being worked on. And so that's what I would be reluctant, is that, we're starting to work on this, and we need everybody to come out and start to work on this,
And
as opposed to delivering a Main Street, or something project.
Yeah.
and I think that's where we've been trying to get to, and then it was just a delay based on the drainage, based on the DOT, and if they don't have that, they don't believe, and I don't want to speak for them, but I don't believe that they're ready to move ahead and say, okay, this is it, without having that data in front of them. So it's fair enough, but at the same time, we need to get it on the calendar and move it along so everybody knows this is what it is. And in order to promote something, whether it be through a flyer, whether it be email, whether it be, knocking on the door, hey, here's a piece of information about a meeting that's forthcoming, is to be decided still.
Yeah, Cliff, I have a thought. As far as being out in the community and talking with the business owners and making sure they're aware of what's going on, as we start getting into the 2030 project, and it's clear that 2030 wants to pass the baton to us to follow through on the project. Do we have the proper members to be able to do that sort of engineering, site assessment, grinding work? Or should we be thinking about expanding the Economic Development Commission, or as people fall off and their terms fall off, bringing in engineering type people?
Makes sense to me. Of course, we don't necessarily have any real input on that. I mean, we obviously now we have one vacancy, and then another that is basically two vacancies, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we don't have anybody to fill it, and I don't know if there's been a timeline established by the Board of Selectmen to fill one or ultimately, hopefully, two spaces here.
Is it the type of thing we should socialize? I mean, should we socialize it? I mean, we could really use some of those folks, engineering type folks,
Mhm.
as we start getting into this, into the 2030 project. I feel strongly about that.
I think that part of the idea of the planner, so Justin, is to kind of bridge that gap and then hopefully be able to find somebody who has those qualifications. Again, that boils down to the Board of Selectmen appointing somebody who, whether they feel as though we need an engineer or whoever involved with economic development. You know, I don't think it's a bad idea. In fact, I would support it. But, you know, where are they going? What direction are they taking? And, you know, we haven't seen in 2 months any action to fill the vacancy. So I guess maybe we can reach out to Mika and see if we can get
Sure.
the ball rolling a
If
little
we
bit
have
more.
If we have the vacancy to fill, absolutely.
Okay. Another note that I added with regards to the update was with regards to our EDC-specific email. Tony, I think everybody is on board with that, so we can,
There's one or two bounce backs, but I know Sherry has her email address somewhat just EDC, but not Woodbridge EDC.
okay.
So I don't know if that matters. We're just going to keep that as it is.
Just keep it as it is.
Keep it as it is, right? Yeah.
Okay. So we'll all be on that, and I just
Yeah.
have to be a little bit more proactive with pushing that for some of the other town emails coming back and forth that I get from some other folks in town. So I'll email them out from that and say, please change my email address going forward to whatever. And should anyone else, I know that Scott at one point, I emailed you to your personal email and noted back. So
It's a lot of work.
it's noted, but
Because you gotta, no, man, it's a
how
lot of work.
many-
You gotta forward it
yeah.
out and say,
how
please
many
use-
people we have to do? But
Yeah.
you know, we'll get there. You know, it was the ask from the town, so we certainly will do our best to comply. Next on the agenda is our business retention. So we've obtained the business listings from the assessor. I printed out 2 of them briefly. Tony's been working very diligently on this. They're broken down by personal property, commercial property. There's some work to still do with these lists in order, because as you're looking at it, for instance, on the personal property list, there's 470 something line items. Some of them are related to equipment rental and things such as that on the personal property. And then when you're looking at to commercial properties, there isn't necessarily a breakdown when we're looking at, for instance, Selden Plaza as an example. So there's not a breakdown that is evident right away to the individual businesses. It is there, but you just have to do some work to kind of dig through and do it. So we're going to be sending this out to all of us on the commission. What this listing does not have is the type of business or industry, nor does it have the personal contact information, either name or email. Tony has been working on this, and when she does circulate the list to us, she has included several columns for workspace for that type of thing.
I have a sample of the list. Did you want me
Sure.
to distribute it to you? And I have it in a spreadsheet, so I just added these other columns for information. This is just the personal property, which is the businesses. Oh, what do you have?
Yeah, thank you.
This is from the assessor's office?
This is from the assessor.
So the information came from the assessor, and it was sorted, so this has been sorted in, by assessment. I removed it just for, there was some expressed concern about confidentiality, so I did remove that, but that's why it's sorted like this. And those that are gray on your paper are actually highlighted in yellow on the spreadsheet. Those are businesses not to call because Mika has his list to reach out, and those are his list. So I think there was some discussion about this being in a Google Doc where we could all update it. I don't know if that's the process you're planning, but I know I did hear somebody say that last time, I believe.
Right.
And so if you look across at this, it shows who the taxpayer is. And of course, we could sort this any way we want. I had to sort it sometimes by address. We sort it by address, we know who's local. I've had to sort it by taxpayer name, just for different things I was doing to try to get the list together for Mika. But you'll see at the very end, that's the actual location of where the properties are. So even though the taxpayer's address may be different, the location number and the street name is where they're located. So if we did want to sort by street to hone in on, that business area, we could do that.
And for the purpose of our outreach for, at first, that connectivity program, you've already kind of highlighted, you in that last column, the areas that are more or less within the business district, but just by looking at the street name, we could figure that out. So if anybody has a recommendation, do we want to take this and kind of digest it for a couple days and circle back on how we want to break this down? I know that Tony's going to have some assistance coming up with some very able-bodied interns, Daniel. So we can kind of go working with them as well. Or if there's anything else that somebody wants to see in conjunction to how we break this down.
There's 428 records. And if you want me to go through it before I circulate it and get rid of the utility companies, I could do that. I just presented it as the information I received, because this is who we mail the annual town mailings to, as well as the preliminary budget information. So I need this when I do those, get the list together for those mailings. So it was just a format that I have. And I usually scrub it, so this is actually the raw list from the assessor. I clean it up to be somewhat more mail-friendly for when it goes into the mail.
I'm sorry, Tony, the DBA column, can you clarify
So
what
for
that is
example,
again?
if you go down in the middle, you'll see this company KRE BSL, which you wouldn't know, Husky Operations, like you wouldn't know who that is, but it's Coachman Square. So if you see the DBA, you'll see, or the Linden, here's Leisure Care, but it's the Linden. And so all those that are highlighted are companies that Mika will be reaching out to. So I should tell you, I put together the contacts for him, who is the right person to speak with. So I did make the phone call initially through the gatekeeper and said that, we'd like to speak with someone about, just make a connection to, in terms of Mika wanting to meet somebody, meet with them, have a discussion. But more importantly, also, there's some things that'll be coming down in the business district that we'd like to make them aware of. And so, I would get the right person. So that just took a little time to get that person's name so that when he makes the call, he has that information.
So we want to populate the first 6 columns? Is that our first objective? Or is it something else?
Yeah, I think that the first 6 is what we need to focus on, because everything that Dale has spoken to us about trying to find what type of businesses we are, right? We know we've got healthcare. We know we've got Crest Auto. We know we've got a lot of professional services. So in industry, looking at this as an example, number 4 on the list, Salwar Incorporated, right? Advanced paving. So we know that granted, it's highlighted, so Mika's going to reach out to those folks. But at the same time, we know that that's a construction type business. So we could put that down as industry. Contact name, we know who that would be and so forth. Email. Going through this, a lot of them, with regard, you can see the Connecticut Light and Power, T-Mobile. Those are a lot of personal property that are being most likely leased. And we can keep going from there. Then once we have this list, and I had a brief conversation with Dale about the idea of business retention, and he would like to come in June and give us a little bit more direction on that. So as a starting point, where Tony said, reach out as we can to some of these folks to get this information. Some of it is going to be easy enough by Google, right? But if we do call and speak with them, say, hey, we're reaching out to you from Economic Development Commission because we wanted to get the right contact information to provide you with some information going, that's upcoming projects that may affect you. And leave it at that for this time being. Then once Dale comes in and gives us a little bit more, he does have a worksheet that's kind of a guide of approaching some of these businesses. And as he's told us before, when we first do so, go to somebody that we know, talk to them, and then once you are comfortable going through this, and he's going to kind of give us more of a idea of, what to ask, right? You're not going to walk in and say, gee, what do you do here? Right? As he's told us before, because that's going to be a waste of their time. We want to see what their concerns may be and where we can kind of help.
So I've got a question. How should we be looking at, on the first page toward the bottom, T-Mobile Northeast LLC, Bellevue, Washington,
Right. So
And
that's
then-
on
and then-
Pumpkin Patch.
and then in Pumpkin Patch Road, which is residential?
Right. So that could very well be if they have a tower over there.
Tower.
If there's a power, there is a tower somewhere down at the end of Pumpkin Patch, I think near, on the
Where's
border of Oak Lane.
on the
Oakland's
other-
got one, yeah.
Oak Lane, Pumpkin Patch, and
It's
Bunker
just
Hill.
up there, yeah, it's right up against it.
All right, that makes sense. And then below that, Sweeney Excavation, looks to be a Hamden company, and then it just says various.
I would assume that Sweeney's got, when this was pulled, Sweeney probably has some of their equipment in town.
Exactly.
So that's why you see at certain times of the year, them moving cranes and things like that, because if you look at New Haven's tax base, well, they don't have Bay Crane or Smedley or one of these companies necessarily in New Haven. They're there because that's where the physical crane is.
Got it.
So some of these things we can kind of, scratch, but
So T-Mobile and Sweeney wouldn't be,
I wouldn't think that would have to do anything there.
okay.
What I could do is when I send over the list, so this was, just so you know, it was based on net assessment, so from highest to lowest. But what I could do is put another little field or whatever sheet there. I think sorting it by zip code or sorting it by street, will give you, you kind of know then where those businesses are located, might kind of help you focus on that. And that's-
So what's the system of record? In other words, where's the data that this is being pulled from? Where's the system of
The
record
assessor's
for this?
So,
Is it an assessor's database? Is it
It's not the
is it
assess-
our own CRM
Yeah.
over the history of EDC?
yeah, the assessor has multiple systems that they deal with where the data resides.
Assessor.
The assessor, I'm sorry, what did I say?
No, I knew you said assessor.
Oh,
That's
assessor, yeah.
I'm-
So-
I can't hear very well.
And so I just give her a criteria for when I do my mailings. And so this does not include, I think I've explained this to Cliff, any businesses that may have exemptions. So like Cure Rare Disease may not be on here because they have they have an exemption, right? But, so these are people who, for the purpose of coming to our town meetings, the criteria is that they are assessed $1,000 or more.
So if there's businesses with exemptions, they may not be on here. But it's a starting place. I have the list. I do have the full grand list. That was provided. I haven't, I'm not sure. I think this is just a good starting point. But again, I'm open to anybody's suggestions.
Is the exemption that you're referring to, is it like for nonprofits that don't pay taxes, or for people that pay fewer taxes than other people? What's the exemption?
So the exemption would probably be for nonprofits. Farms maybe have exemptions. And that's something really I think the assessor needs to speak with. There's a whole variety of different,
Okay. So I would still propose we include everybody,
okay.
because we're not based on who pays how much taxes, right? We're based on business retention, whether that business is a nonprofit or for-profit. So my take is we include everybody, because they all make up Woodbridge, whether they pay taxes or not. And they all contribute to the health of the town, so.
I agree with you, but I'm struggling with not targeting an area. I mean, it seems as though our conversation is focused on providing notice to companies in 2030 who may be impacted by the lot zip activities. So, some of the farmland, some of the businesses that may have exemptions may not be in that targeted area.
But at the same time, it would be good to know, exactly what's there. But for our starting point, I think this is a great place to start. And with that last column, property location by street, if you just look down, you can see Bradley, Amity, South Bradley, whatever. By looking at that, and if we want to start there within the business district, and then we can kind of balloon out. So we can even do a sort by that somehow,
And Chatty, I agree with you, because that was my question as well. I mean, I agree with what you were saying. I just didn't have a clean list.
It's okay.
And so the assessor gave me the full grand list, and I haven't even had a chance to analyze it, so that you could sort it any way that you want. I mean, if you're just looking to get every business by address, if that's all that you like.
I don't have enough experience. Maybe Sherry would be really good at this too, but this sounds like a CRM system, client relationship management system we want. And so, what's out there? Is there something that's off the shelf that maybe less assessment-like, because that's just where we've always gotten it, but this is really a client relationship database. And, you want to be able to sift that and sort that every which way. For instance, I'd like to have someday, let's say we're this huge really cat's meow economic development commission, and we have a professional advisors group that advises, and all the lawyers and the doctors and all the engineers, like you're saying, and they're so we have tons of lawyers here, but are we really capturing that in a code that's a relationship? Give me all our professionals that are really not sitting and driving huge walk-in traffic necessarily, but they're doing consulting services, and they're a whole different. I'm just saying is maybe starting, and I don't mean to slow this down, but Sherry might have, because she's got she knows client relationship, like this. I just think of that from my Yale days of looking at how we work with client relationship management databases, and how we sort of sift this, and we're pulling it off in assessors, which was probably not designed for client relationships at all, and so we may.
No, I'm sure not.
And so what I'm saying is you may be able to take this data, but really the real data is, putting it into a system that's, maybe Dale knows the answer to that, is is there, $50 a year, $100 a year, where we can actually download this data, but then work it and create a client relationship management database. We know what area they're in, we know what professions they're in, we know if they're construction, so we can sort of, put those groups together to advise us.
I think, unfortunately, though, we have to do some of the grunt work.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't say that, but I
Right,
meant the
because
system we use.
I think that if we start here, if we start you know, with the full list. I mean, I think regardless, if you keep track of what you do, we could always move the data once we get the full list, but I think you've got to start somewhere. We're reaching out to those businesses,
Absolutely.
finding out who's the right person to speak with.
Yep.
And and then just getting a consent that if we'd like to keep them updated on things, can we use their email? So that if we do come up with the date for the 2030, at least we have some database. I mean, right now, or we could just simply, we could just do a mailing. I mean, but then you just don't know if the mailing's going to the right person. It goes to the person at the reception area, says, I don't even know what this is, and throws it in the garbage. You know what I mean? So I guess it's more philosophy and how best you all think you should approach it.
I think we're saying the same thing. I mean, we got to start somewhere. We got to collect the data. But all I'm, saying is that maybe we want to have a CRM system where when we collect that data, we can have it here first to start with. But that data, got to get into a CRM. Like, what do other chambers of commerce use? What kind of systems do they use? Is that what we really want as an EDC, as opposed to just an assessor's database that we're trying to put a round peg in a square hole kind of thing? We're going to ask too much of the assessor. When we're starting to slice this and dice this, we're going to ask too much of we got to collect the data, but we're going to ask them to slice and dice this too much going forward.
Or we could use this as our database right now.
Correct.
And then if we decide to go to something fancy,
I agree with that.
Yeah.
upload it.
Yeah.
We gotta walk before we can run. Let's
Yeah.
start walking.
And if there is something available, and perhaps Dale, with his days as EDC Economic Development Director, could point us in the right
Right,
direction, or even because Barry Cohen from the Amity Chamber reached out, he's looking for a directory of businesses. I said, we're in the process of working on this. We'll get back to you, but it's a starting point,
Yep.
and at least we can deliver something by doing this.
Yeah. Thank you for your hard work on this, Tony.
Yes, thank you.
So we can,
Have you had to increase your prescription?
if everybody thinks a Google Doc would be the way to
I
go,
like the
we
Google
can,
Doc
we
idea.
can go that route, and that way we can get in there and have a constant update, and everybody can kind of see what's going on. We'll go from there. So to break this list down, we can circle back. We'll take a couple days to look at it.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, if somebody knows, for example, diversified sales.
There's a few on this list I know.
Right. Right. So it would make sense for you to say, I want to grab
take
1,
that
2,
one
3,
back.
4, 5,
Yeah.
and we can go back to it.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'll also sit with Chris Dickerson and go through this since his business is downtown.
Right.
What are you doing for industry?
I think the breakdown should be somewhat,
Sickos or?
yeah, I mean, I would take anybody's recommendation on it. Looking at it, there's certainly professional services, construction, healthcare, manufacturing,
Financial.
I like
finance.
SIC code might be a little granular, but I like that idea.
Or just give it, maybe that's not our real focus yet, is getting the contact information and then figuring out what they actually do. And
And then go back.
Yeah, let's get started.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in the entry, one of these rows, it wouldn't hurt to put just the basic healthcare.
I would think that's
Manufacturing.
just a good starting point.
And then we can revisit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And should we identify ourselves also?
Or who's touching the
Yeah.
record?
That would
Oh,
make
yeah,
sense.
column for who's.
Even under
Yeah,
under
definitely.
comment, put
Yeah.
our initials or Cliff or
Well, it's interesting because when I was calling for Mika, I did not know there's this company called Lincare Inc. in Woodbridge that provides respiratory medical equipment by appointment only. So I didn't really, by looking at the name, I would not have known
Yep.
what that. So I put that in the comment, so that just as a reminder that what that
Okay.
business was. But of course, I could either put another column here for
Okay.
initials.
I would suggest a separate, standalone column, dedicated column for each. So we can leave comments like that.
Yeah. Okay, so where would you like that? After after industry, before industry, and how about right before industry?
Right before industry.
Yeah.
Right, so that if you touch that record, you know the person and you're going to. Yeah.
So maybe home business or something? Home office, home business? Like a lot of these aren't gonna be really dealing with our business district,
No,
right?
certainly not.
So that, maybe it's a home office.
That would be, I would say, in the comment section.
Take
Yeah.
comments for now.
Comments now for that rather
Yeah.
than
Yep.
an industry comment, just a comment.
I'm flipping
Look at
through
some-
this. Yeah, I see one of my former students has a photography business.
Gotcha. Right.
There you go.
She's working out of her house. I know that.
But she doesn't have a location in our business district where she.
Not outside her house.
Right, so she's not
She's very good
concerned about
about
the lots of grant right now.
Right.
Not at this point yet.
So you would like for me to add that column? Do you want me to sort this in any way, or do you all feel
I can sort.
you just want to sort it as you work it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
that's the
thank you.
easiest way to do it. Okay. Again, Tony, thank you for all your work on this. I know you've been doing this for quite some time, so thank you. Under new business, is there anything that anybody has? Something kind of cool, I thought, something different. And is everybody on the Amity Chamber email distribution list?
Yes.
So you might have gotten that business before hours at Pez. That's on May 22nd from 8:30. Got to walk through the Pez factory. I've never been. My kids have, and they thought it was great. But if I have time that day, I'm certainly going to make a run over there.
One of our friends is one of the, I don't know if he's the lead designer or like the head engineer for all of the little Pez design
Really?
thingies.
Very cool. Well, we have now a collection of them.
Good job, Dad.
You guys do?
Yeah, that's what they've begun. I don't know where they get them, but they show up. Okay. Beyond that, we didn't hear anything back from Sherry about the meeting that she was to have following our last EDC meeting with Retail Pop-Up Project, but I would agree with what she had said, that we may just kind of move that to a back burner and go from there. Especially based on the budget.
Does it stay in our budget now? It's in our budget now.
No.
It's in, but it's not the final number. We asked for that 40, we didn't get it. So
Oh, it's out.
it, from the Board of Selectmen kept it in, but the Board of Finance had it reduced.
Gotcha.
Right.
So that's gonna be a hurry up and wait on that one. Okay. Next, we have public comment. Any public comment?
Don't all speak at
Public
once.
comment? Public comment. Thank you. Seeing none. Our next meeting is June 12th at 6 o'clock. Tony will not be here, so one question to address is if any of our members feel as though they can serve as the secretary for taking the minutes on that night, or should we reach out to another staff member to step in for Tony on the 12th?
I'll take the minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brave man.
I'll do my best.
It's okay.
It's on video. You can always
That's it. It's on video.
watch it. Yeah.
Okay.
Cliff, I may not be at the June 12th meeting.
Okay.
I'm not sure yet.
And I will certainly, I'm gonna see Mika this week anyway for Main Street, so I will bring up our vacancies and see if we can get some movement on that.
Oh, and Mika did say that if anybody did want, just as you're doing your reach out, if any of the business would like to meet, he's more than willing to join you
Right.
Okay.
at a meeting, so.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
You could always call me, I could kind of give you a heads up on his schedule and what days look good, so.
Wonderful. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.